Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tri-City Regional Chambers Network Tri-Cities Membership Luncheon. I'm Lori Mattson, President and CEO, and I look forward to sharing this program with you today, and thank you all for attending. Today, the Chamber has partnered with the Hanford communities to present an issue briefing on the accomplishments that have been made at Hanford with the first year of funding from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. You will hear this referred to as ARRA or stimulus funding. We were fortunate to receive almost $2 billion from Congress that was to be spent over a 3-year period to create jobs and advance environmental cleanup activities. With recently negotiated contracts in place and updated regulatory requirements, Hanford was in a position to hit the ground running when the funding was made available. You're going to hear today from Hanford managers and regulators about what has been accomplished with the additional funding in this past year.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you about the Hanford cleanup with my colleagues here and focusing on the Recovery Act and the progress we've made at Hanford in terms of cleanup using Recovery Act dollars or stimulus. With that, in terms of just the funding priorities and the requirements of the Act was passed with focus on creating jobs and getting people to work, and we've done that here at Hanford. For Richland Operations Office alone, we got a check for $1.635 billion. There was a lot of requirements on that money in terms of how to spend it, reporting, accountability, and ensuring that the taxpayer gets value for those dollars. We did create jobs in terms of work that was ready to go. We had a lot of cleanup work that was in contracts that we got regulatory approval to do. So we were able to hit the ground running in terms of hiring folks, training those people, and then doing cleanup. Here's the money we received. 2 major contracts in terms of Richland Operations Office, the Central Plateau Remediation Contractor, and then the Washington Closure Contractor. You can see they've spent almost $600 million in terms of cleanup, doing cleanup. Another important aspect of the Act is to get the money quickly to the people that actually do the work, so there's a lot of subcontracting going on that spreads the wealth in the community. And you could see the amount of money that was awarded to almost 500 companies just for the Plateau Remediation Company to do cleanup work on the site. In terms of jobs saved or jobs created, with the funds that we got for our appropriations from Congress in fiscal year 2009, we were going to have to lay off almost 300 folks in the spring of 2009 based on the appropriations we got from Congress. So with the Recovery Act being passed in late February of 2009, that avoided 300 layoffs on the Hanford site. And then with the dollars that we received, we've actually created jobs for 5,000 people in terms of doing cleanup work at the Hanford site in terms of direct workers or subcontractors that provide supplies or services to the prime contractors. What are we doing with the money? So that's a key component, obviously. We want to spend the dollars wisely, get cleanup done, reduce the risk Hanford poses to the environment, and reduce overall time or schedule or cost for cleanup. So one of the projects that the contractors are doing is demolishing old facilities on the Hanford site. This is a picture of demolishing activities on the uranium oxide conversion facility next to U Canyon. This is the cool part in terms of demolishing the facility, but the real work goes internal to the facility to get the building ready for demolishing. So the workers spend a lot of time, probably 80% of the effort or so, to, for example, strip out asbestos insulation so that doesn't go airborne during demolishing activities, draining liquids from equipment so that doesn't spill when you demolish the facility. And so it ends up, this took about over a year to get this facility ready to demolish, and then demolishing activities started about 2 months ago, and it's almost done. Another thing that we're doing with Recovery Act dollars is building new treatment capacity for contaminated groundwater. So we have two large groundwater systems being installed, one along the Columbia River to remove chromium contamination from groundwater that was contaminated from past operations, and then another very large facility on the center portion of the Hanford site that will clean up groundwater that's been contaminated with carbon tetrachloride and some radionuclides like technetium-99. So the Recovery Act dollars was able to accelerate the construction of those facilities. Those facilities are on schedule to start complete construction by the summer of 2011 and then start operation shortly after that. Those systems that we're putting in place will quadruple our treatment capacity. Right now we treat about 50 million gallons of water a month. So every day we're doing cleanup out there in terms of treatment of groundwater. And with these systems coming online in the next year or so, that'll go up to 200 million gallons a month and greatly speed up the two major goals we have is to stop some chromium contamination from entering the river, the Columbia River by 2012, and then clean up the groundwater that's contaminated along the river by 2020. So with these systems that are going on in place, we'll definitely be able to realize those goals and restore the groundwater at the Hanford site much sooner than we would be able to if we didn't get Recovery Act dollars. Another thing that we're doing with a high-risk facility called the plutonium finishing plant. So this facility was the key facility at the Hanford site that converted that made the product of Hanford in terms of plutonium metal for the weapons program. And this facility has been shut down for over 10 years, and we're in the middle of using Recovery Act funds to ready that facility for demolishing in 2013. So we're on track, or the contractor's on track, to complete that strip out of that large facility by the end of 2012 using stimulus dollars, and then demolish the facility by 2013. Another thing we're doing is retrieving of waste that has been stored since the 1970s awaiting disposal at the National Repository called the WIP Isolation Pilot Plant. Recovery Act dollars allowed us to continue that retrieval of waste and get it in a form that's ready to go to the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant. And then also we're using stimulus dollars to move the waste to Carlsbad, New Mexico, where the repository is. We started shipments in March of this year, and we continue those shipments about 5 a week. We do shipments on an average. Another thing that we focused on was expanding both the footprint and the capability of the environmental restoration disposal facility. This facility is the engineered disposal cell in the center portion of the Hanford site that takes all the remediation waste, mostly from the cleanup along the Columbia River, and isolates it from the environment to ensure it doesn't affect the environment in the future. So this is the cornerstone, or a cornerstone, of cleanup of the Hanford site where all of our waste goes. The contractor's been successful in terms of using Recovery Act to expand the capability of the facility by adding 2 new cells called 9 and 10. And then also another key aspect is with all this cleanup going on in these next couple years, we had to increase the rate at which the facility can receive waste from all the cleanup projects going on. And they, again, were successful in doing that. And if you look at the average number of trucks that went to the environmental restoration disposal facility just in 2009 was around 150, and now they average about 400 trucks a day. We are on track to complete the work as required by the statute and by environmental management leadership at headquarters. The other thing that we've gotten permission to do is a lot of this work will be done below the anticipated cost that we originally planned for. We're going to be allowed to use those savings to do more cleanup work in 2012. So headquarters has given us the green light, and we're incentivizing the contractors to be as efficient as we can in order to use additional Recovery Act, or use those saved Recovery Act dollars in 2012 to do more cleanup. We're also looking at life after Recovery Act. So when we're done spending the bulk of the money in September 2011, we're down to our appropriations, whatever we get for fiscal year 2012 in terms of congressional appropriations. And so that will be a reduction in terms of the dollars we're spending at the Hanford site for cleanup. And we're planning workforce transition and looking at ways with headquarters to minimize any adverse impacts we have to the workforce as we reduce workforce to accommodate the available dollars we get from Congress. If you want more about Recovery Act, there is just tons of information. You could start at hanford.gov and go to the Recovery Act link.
I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Bill and the Chamber of Commerce to allow us to come up and do this presentation. It is my pleasure to be able to stand up here today and depict where we are as the Office of River Protection for Recovery Act and what it has done for this project. With that, a little bit about this. One of the key attributes that Matt mentioned was that we had newly awarded contracts, which allowed us to be basically shovel-ready, as said at headquarters, to be able to execute the work scope without creating new contracts or allowing new contracts to be placed. We could just pull that work scope from the future forward with the additional funds. So with the tank farm operating contract, which is a newly awarded $7.1 billion contract over a 10-year time frame, with a focus on maintaining the tanks, reducing the risk with the 53 million gallons within those tanks, and preparing it for treatment at waste treatment plant, this allowed us to pull some of those infrastructure upgrades that were focused in the 2013, 14, 15 through 17 timeframe forward into the near term to allow us to reduce that bow wave that was coming up. Just a little background, I don't know, there are 177 tanks, 149 of those are single shell tanks, some dating back to the 1940s. There are 28 double shell tanks, which were built between 1968 and 1986. These tanks range anywhere from 55,000 gallons up to 1 million gallons. When you look at a 1 million gallon tank in comparison to a basketball court, you see that up there. It basically takes up the whole basketball court and is 49 feet tall. So we're talking very large tanks. 67 of these tanks are presumed leakers. So one of the keys is how do we stage this and how do we get ready to deliver that waste out of those single shell tanks over to the double shell tanks and finally over to the vitrification plant for vitrification in the 2019 timeframe during the startup of that plant. Office of River Protection was given $326 million to do that. As of June, we had spent 107 of that. The thing we're a little different on is everybody else in the complex, or the majority of the complex, was focused on footprint reduction, creating jobs first, then footprint reduction and life cycle cost savings. The Office of River Protection has a slightly different mission than what RL has, which is cleaning up the site. We are basically getting ready to operate the waste treatment plant and treat that 53 million gallons of waste. In order to do that, there are a significant number of upgrades that need to be done. So we positioned ourselves to basically take this funds and rather than do footprint reduction, reinvest in our infrastructure so that we are ready to deliver a sustained and reliable feed to that waste treatment plant in 2019. So you can see some of the key objectives that we have, which are tank farm infrastructure upgrades, facility life extension. There's two key ones there. That's 242A evaporator and the 222S laboratory. Preparing the feed for waste treatment plant, which really deals with doing the strategic planning and the mixer pump designs and getting ready to blend that waste into a consistent, reliable feed. And then creating a safer and more environmentally friendly workplace. And really that deals with worker safety. That was take some of the obstacles that are in our single shell tanks that are obsolete, just sitting there, possible health hazards or environmental risks, and get those removed and disposed of in our environmental restoration facility. As we talked about jobs being the #1 priority, in the end, the approximate jobs that will be saved over the Recovery Act will be about 700 jobs with the Office of River Protection. If you look at the March data in federalreporting.gov, we had 414 FTEs, including both the prime and the subcontractor. The key here is that we are creating the next generation of workforce. We are carefully hiring direct hires such that those direct hires will be able to be maintained as long as we see our funding forecast as it is, such that the attrition rate, as it goes down, we're hiring those new people. So we're getting a unique opportunity here to train that next generation of workforce, these new hires, under the experience of the old workforce as they transition out. So that is the plan for the Office of River Protection as far as the jobs go. For the work scope, we split our work into 5 major sections. You can see here RA1 through RA5. This deals with tank infrastructure. The other infrastructure projects are more R&D style projects, facility upgrades, waste feed delivery infrastructure, and as well as the waste feed transfer lines, which is the only capital asset project we have, but that deal with the remediation or the replacement of the SY transfer lines between the individual tanks and pits. Talking about infrastructure improvements, some of the key attributes that need to be upgraded are the ventilation systems as we get ready to blend these tanks and mix them to get ready to send them across site, or even from one site, from one double shell tank to another, staging for waste treatment, delivery to the waste treatment in 2019. Electrical systems, with the increased demand, we're going back and looking at where do we need additional electrical supply. The valve pits, AW valve pit is crucial to the success of the WTP. All the waste that goes to WTP goes through AP valve pit. We are replacing 48 valves in that pit, as well as a number of jumpers. So that gives us the ability to easily operate that pit in a safe environment. It also reduces the ability. Right now we verify by camera and by computer modeling where that valve is because the indicator plates aren't accurate. This allows us to accurately place those indicator plates, removing that requirement and reducing the burden of cost and man hours to do those valve alignments. In the area of facility life cycle extension, 2 major facilities, 2482A, crucial to the mission, and that is basically the reduction or the removal of water from the waste in the double shell tanks to create a thicker waste, allowing more volume to be placed into those double shell tanks. That's a critical facility for us. One of the key elements that has caused us delays last year is as you see the upper picture, is the raw water service building. That caused us about 4 weeks of delays last year in the operations due to mechanical failures. That facility has been completely redone, all new parts from front end to back, and that is now online. We're also looking at providing spare parts and updating the ventilation system, as well as we did facility decontamination, which allowed the workers to, instead of entering in whites, be able to enter in normal street clothes, which is a giant cost savings. For the 222S laboratory, this laboratory is needed in support of analytical requirements for the waste treatment plant. Mission life is basically the end of the project. We've gone through and upgraded numerous instruments which are 15 to 20 years old, taking weeks and months to do the analysis to days and hours and days with this new equipment. So significantly improved our productivity there. Facility improvements and expansions, we're taking old dilapidated mobile offices, replacing them with new modern facilities, as well as conditioned storage, and we're upgrading the lighting with more energy efficient lighting throughout the facility. Feeding the waste treatment plant, there's a number of studies that are, this category is mostly focused on, focused on studies and dealing with determination of how we're going to mix, what the requirements are for those mixer pumps, the feed, how we're going to feed, what the requirements are for that. So there's a lot of studies that go on here. There's a tank waste mixing study. We've got some cast stone studies that are going on, and this is really focused on what is it that's going to be needed in the near term to make those critical decisions that gets us to that 2019 date to provide a consistent and reliable feed to that waste treatment plant. So that's the focus of this area. When we talk about supporting local businesses, it's been a goal of the office as well as the contractors to support the local businesses. To date, we've released about $72 million worth of contracts to local businesses. About $45 million of that has been to small businesses, approximately 86%. Great metric that I applaud the WRPS for doing, and we continue to support that. From a personnel issue, we've hired about Out of the total, about 73% of those come from Washington State. Out of the number of Washington State, about 86% of those are local hires. So great statistics for hiring our local workforce. I will leave the presentation with the for contracting opportunities. You can contact Melissa for that information, as well as there are the website for that information. So lots of opportunities left to be had for Recovery Act, numerous RFPs coming up, so feel free to join us in the fun.
And thank you very much. I want to echo my thanks to the Chamber for having us here today to talk about the stimulus funding, and a special thanks to Pam Larson and the local governments and local elected officials of the Hanford communities who continually work to provide opportunities to educate not just locally but statewide and nationally on Hanford cleanup. It's a really important mission that they do. The state appreciates the commitment to Hanford cleanup that was made by Congress, the administration, and the Department of Energy by bringing all this funding to the Hanford cleanup. We think DOE and their contractors have done a very good, very effective job of putting the funding to work to enhance cleanup, to focus on issues that are critical to the state of Washington, and to provide jobs for our community. DOE worked with the state and with EPA from the idea inception of the stimulus funding on which projects would be eligible, how to prioritize the funding. We've had excellent communication and collaboration through the extent of the cleanup, both on the general cleanup and on the stimulus-funded cleanup. So Ecology's job as part of this partnership was to ensure that the state requirements were met and that the quality of cleanup was retained even with this highly accelerated schedule and the increased workload volumes. We had commitments from the highest levels of our agency, Ecology, as well as the governor's office, to help make sure that the funding could be put to work quickly and that our regulatory decisions wouldn't impede getting folks jobs and getting the work going at Hanford. The additional funding has helped meet some very critical milestones for the state that both Matt and Tom have spoken about in their presentation. In particular, the accelerated work on cleaning up the groundwater to protect the Columbia River. You saw in Matt's presentation the treatment systems, the big pump and treat systems that are going on along the river and also in the Central Plateau. Those are a key to remediating the contamination that exists so that we can protect the river. Another project, again, that Matt had shown you was the removal of transuranic waste, which are the long-lived radioactive contaminated waste from the center of Hanford, and getting those ready for and shipped to New Mexico for disposal. That was a key priority for the state, and in the original budget, we understood that that project was probably going to be substantially slowed or else absolutely stopped, and so it was very important to us when this money came through, and DOE did agree to prioritize that work and have done a great job keeping that work going and in fact accelerating on it. Tom spoke of the infrastructure work that's being done in the tank farms. We think that that is critical. That system is decades old. We have a number of future retrievals that will depend on that infrastructure work and on feeding the waste treatment plant so that we can get that waste treated and in a safe configuration. We continue to work closely with both offices to oversee the activity and help prioritize projects. In fact, our recent letter to DOE headquarters and the local offices on the budget gave a 5-year list of priority projects so that if the site was able to achieve savings and possibly redirect that into additional stimulus cleanup work, that they would have a list of items that the state felt would be priority for them to invest in preparation. We know that the budgets are going to be very tight in 2012 and beyond. Our nation's struggling with a really difficult budget choices, so that we believe that having had DOE demonstrate their effective use of these fundings, that partnering with them on the decision making helps make our sites seem more, quote, investment worthy, we hope, so that they will be looked at in a positive way in the future. Maintaining cleanup momentum is a key to meeting the 2015 vision that Matt spoke of, the TPA legal requirements, retaining our community's economic vitality, and reducing the long-term cost and schedule for cleanup at Hanford. So it's really critical for each of us to encourage our congressional delegations to continue their excellent work on securing funding and to support Energy and its contractors in the work they're doing under the stimulus. Thank you.
I want to give just a little bit of background about the TriParty Agreement. That's the reason I'm here. It defines our roles and responsibilities and basically sets a framework of how we play together. The TriParty Agreement is 21 years old this year. And I liken that to it's now into its young adulthood. And I think our relationship is also in young adulthood. We've made a lot of progress on the cleanup and how we work through our TriParty Agreement. And the other analogy I want to draw is the energy. I think the cleanup out there with the stimulus has the same energy as a 21-year-old. When you're out on site, you can feel that energy. You can feel the excitement for the work that's getting done. Having said that, what scares me, if we don't continue this progress, when the TriParty Agreement and the cleanup is finished, the TriParty Agreement will be very, very old. And again, we still have 30 to 50 years. My goal is that we actually get it done when it's in its middle age and not its old age. And again, to do that, we need to continue to keep the funding. Talk a little bit about the EPA project office itself. We're unique in that we were actually the first project office established by EPA anywhere in the nation that we know of. So back in 1990, my main office is in Seattle, Washington. They decided that the Hanford cleanup was important enough to establish a field office. And today we have approximately 10 people working on Hanford and the Idaho National Lab. And based on that, we now have a lot of people that are actually place-based out into communities from EPA. So we like to think that we're the pioneers in that. My bio already talked about our main responsibility at Hanford is to oversee the cleanup of contaminated soils, groundwater, and old contaminated buildings. You saw many pictures that Matt put up, and again, we're making excellent progress with the stimulus funding. So shifting into that, one of the things we actually were able to hire 2 people to help oversee this work. The other thing that everyone has talked about is shovel ready. That was the key to this, both here and at Idaho. We made sure that the projects we picked, we could hit the ground running. We had the regulatory paperwork all in place, and we simply kept the momentum. And again, that's a very important concept. And the other thing that I don't think Matt mentioned, but we're getting a tremendous return on investment, between 1.3 and 1.6 return on each dollar spent. We need to keep that momentum as we move forward into 2012 because, again, that's getting a tremendous bang for the buck. And again, the main reason the ARRA was put together was to put people back to work. And again, you saw the numbers that Matt put up. It's staggering. And I think our challenge is to keep those people employed post-2012.
To find out how you can become more involved in this important regional issue, or to have a Hanford Community speaker talk to your organization, contact the Hanford Communities at 509-942-7348 or by fax at 509-942-7379 or visit our website at www.ci.richland.wa.us.